Somebody hit record on a Tuesday night stream and the whole thing turned into a receipt drop. Not a subtweet. Not a shade room repost. A live, on-camera, time-stamped roll call, names, addresses, county checks, karaoke bars, tampons, the works. Jaidyn Alexis sat in front of her camera on July 22nd and started reading. And the girl she was reading, Sadie, Rock, wasn't even in the room to duck. Real quick before we get into the paper on this one, if the kind of stream-to-stream forensics we do lands for you, tap the like, lock in the sub, flip the bell, so the next one doesn't miss your feed. Ride with us. Here's what actually happened, on paper, on the record. On the night of July 22nd, 2026, Jaidyn Alexis, the mother of Blueface's youngest, signed to Milf Music, the Stewie artist Billboard has covered on and off since 2023. Went live from what looked like her home studio setup with her friend Sam. Somewhere between the intro chatter and the chat scrolling, Sam surfaced a clip. In that clip, Rock, who most of y'all know as the baddies alum Blueface ex, mother of Jr., reportedly said Jaidyn stink. That was the match. Jaidyn picked up the gasoline. What followed was a roughly hour-long live that hit a party bus tampon story, a $900 county check accusation, a Section 8 apartment jab, a Bravo and Blueface cross-entanglement, and a karaoke bar allegation with her words videos attached. That's the surface. The paper is louder. One more layer to set before the passes open. The room around that live is bigger than the room in the frame. Milf Music, per the label's own Instagram footprint and the trades that have covered its rollout, is not just a vanity imprint. It's a distribution vehicle with paperwork behind it, and Jaidyn's discography sits inside that vehicle. On the other side of the fence, Krasin's management orbit has rotated more than once since her baddies run, and the Jasmine brand has covered the churn. Add to that the fact that this specific live went up while Krasin was, per reporting, in the final stretch of a pregnancy she's spoken about publicly on her own platforms, and you have a room where every named party has a public archive and a private phone log running in parallel. That's the setting. That's the desk this got read from. And the part we're going to circle back to at the end, the one line she dropped in passing, almost like a shrug, about who's still calling, who, that's the one that changes how the whole thing reads. We'll get there. Okay, so let's pull the actual quotes. Not the vibes. The words. Quote 1. Straight off the stream. Remember when everything happened with old girl that her friend's baby daddies and she said I stink. Oh, wait. Okay, so today on live she said you stink. That's Jaidyn setting the frame. This isn't new. This is a rerun. Same accusation, second cycle. Then the pivot, this coming from the girl that put tampons up her. And the rest of that sentence is where the party bus story spills out. Quote 2 on the party bus incident verbatim from Alive. We all went on this party bus, right? Unsolicited information. Shorty is like, hey, y'all, if y'all ever need a tip on how to make sure you don't stink, a dancer trick is like if you stink or whatever, you stuff a tampon up there and cut the string off. That's the anchor claim. That's the one everybody's clipping. And notice, she's not saying she overheard it. She's saying she was on the bus. First-person witness. Sam, sitting right next to her, corroborates in real time that matters for the tier this receipt sits in. This isn't a rumor she got in her DMs. This is her own account of being there. Still her word against Krasin's, still reported, still allegedly, but it's first-hand allegedly, not third-hand. Quote 3, and this is where the auditor in me sat up. I know you get your little $900 county check, and then you just pretend like your baby daddy's money is yours. That's not a vibe check. That's a specific dollar figure. $900. Monthly. County. If Jaidyn is throwing a number that clean out on a live stream, either she's making it up on the fly, possible, or somebody who knows told her, or she knows firsthand from the era, when they were closer than they are now. All three are possible. Only one of them is airtight. Hold that. Quote 4 on the housing, she's either going back to her mom's one-bedroom apartment or to her baby daddy's house. Your mom is sloppy and lives on Section 8 and lives in a you got us 10 to 1 house to 1 apartment to 1 room. That's messy. That's mean. And that's also the kind of specific that either lands or blows up in your face depending on whether it holds up. No paper on this one yet. Reported claim from Jaidyn only. Quote 5, and this is the one that made me rewind. On the Bravo entanglement, Sadie slept with Blueface, and then she returned the favor and slept with Bravo. Bravo being Blueface's real name, Jonathan Michael Porter, Complex has documented that whole family tree extensively. So the claim, decoded, is Krazian slept with Jaidyn's baby father Blueface, which is public record. They had a whole child together, Krazian Jr. The neighborhood talk has covered every chapter. And in Jaidyn's telling, she returned the favor by sleeping with Krazian's. We'll come back to who Bravo is here in a second because the naming gets tangled. Quote 6, and this one gets less airtime because it landed in the middle of the mama of Krazian stretch. You don't even have your own bed, girl. You sleeping on the same mattress your little sister sleep on. Reported, one party, no independent corroboration. Filed under the housing bundle for the record. Tier reads as claim, not receipt. According to Jaidyn, only in the middle of a live, she was already 3 drinks of momentum deep into. Quote 7, and this is the one that will get subclipped and turned into a reaction thumbnail by end of week. Tell them to stop calling my phone. I mean it. Stop calling my phone. Delivered flat. Delivered twice. Delivered with the kind of enunciation that only shows up in a Jaidyn live when she wants the chat to screenshot the exact phrasing. The Shade Room has, in past cycles, singled out that specific cadence when Jaidyn switches into what her fans call the label voice. That cadence is on the tape here. Reported on camera unambiguous. Quote 8 on the karaoke thread. I got videos. I'm not showing them tonight. But I got them and everybody who was there got them. She doesn't name the venue. She doesn't name the night. She names the medium video and the possession, hers and other people's. That's the tell of someone who has been asked off camera whether the material exists and has been reassured that it does. Still an allegation. Still uncorroborated by anyone but Jaidyn. But the phrasing is careful in a way the tampon story phrasing isn't. Now, the overlay. Because this isn't happening in a vacuum. Hold up, let me reread that part. Because Bravo in Blueface orbit has referred to a couple of different people over the years, and if we're being honest about what's a hard receipt versus what's a pattern read, I want to make sure we're not conflating two men. In the transcript, Jaidyn says she returned the favor and slept with Bravo, and later she references a Bravo story time the chat is asking about. Reading it in context, the favor framing points to someone in Krazian's camp, a partner, an ex, an adjacent figure. Jaidyn treats it as a swap. That's the frame she's selling. Whether the paper holds that up is a different question, and right now on stream, it's her allegation only. Tier of certainty, reported by one party in the middle of a live stream fight. Now, the overlay. Because this isn't happening in a vacuum. Krazian and Jaidyn have been in low-grade orbit around each other for years, ever since Rolling Stone and everybody else started chronicling the Blueface reality TV era. The two of them are connected by one man, one child on each side, and one very messy public timeline. Krazian and Blueface. XXL has the receipts on the On Again Off Again, produced Krazian Jr. in 2023. Jaidyn and Blueface, longer running, produced their kids and the Milf music label deal, which is where Stewie and the rest of Jaidyn's catalog live. So, when Jaidyn says, we tried to fight months ago, and they're still talking on live now, she's referencing an already existing beef arc. This isn't the opener. This is Act 3, minimum. Now, overlay the label calendar on top of the beef calendar. Stewie, and the singles that followed it were, per the release date footprint archived on Genius, rolled out on a rhythm. One release, one press cycle, one live stream promo cycle. That rhythm has been steady enough that when a live like this Tuesday night one detonates, you can look at the 2 weeks before it and see whether a rollout was queued. Look at the 2 weeks before this live. There's a pending single window sitting right on top of it. That's not naming anything the audience can't verify. That's noting that when Jaidyn goes scorched earth on a Tuesday, the label calendar behind her is not empty. Now, walk the phone line timing next to that. Jaidyn says on record that, tell them to stop calling me. Present tense, ongoing action. She doesn't say stopped. She doesn't say used to. Present tense means the calls are in the current window. The current window is the same window as the pending single window. The audience listening on Tuesday is the audience who will be online for the release. The word for that is not accident. The word for that is architecture. The timing is what I keep coming back to. Jaidyn saying Krazian is still talking right now on live in July 2026, while Krazian, per public timeline, is reportedly in the final stretch of a pregnancy. Jaidyn hits that too. Ain't you a month out? It should have been done. That's not just a jab. That's a clock. Jaidyn is telling the audience the window on this beef is closing because the other party is about to be very busy. Whether that's a courtesy or a taunt depends on how you read the tone, and honestly the tone reads as both. Which is the point. She's leaving the read up to you. Zoom the same, clock the other direction. Krazian's public content cadence has, per the archive Hot New Hip Hop keeps on her platform posts, slowed measurably in the last 6 weeks. Fewer lives, shorter captions. That's the pregnancy footprint showing up in the metrics. Jaidyn's cadence over the same 6 weeks has gone the other way. Longer lives, more of them, tighter timestamps between them. 2 curves crossing in opposite directions. Jaidyn is picking her moment on the exact week her cadence crosses above Krazian's for the first time in the arc. The overlay reads as strategic, not spontaneous. Somebody in the comments is going to say she was just mad. That's fine. Mad and prepared aren't mutually exclusive. And here's where the pattern gets loud. Look at the sequence of what got dropped in one live. The odor accusation gets returned. The tampon story lands. The county check gets named with a specific dollar figure. The mom's housing situation gets pinned to Section 8. The baby daddy's supposed control gets framed as him keeping her around because he doesn't trust her with the baby at your mom's house. The Bravo swap gets floated. The karaoke bar story gets teased with I got videos. That is not a freestyle. That is a stack. Somebody sat with a list before that live went on. Or somebody has been sitting with the list for a while and finally had a reason to open the folder. Either way, planned inventory delivered under the cover of a clapback. Layer one more mechanic on top of the stack. The order of the drops. Housing lands before Bravo. Bravo lands before karaoke. Karaoke gets teased but not resolved. That order matches the order of escalation in the classic reality TV producer edit, set the low-stakes personal shot, elevate to the relational shot, tease the wild card for later. Jaidyn didn't invent that shape. She's been on the receiving end of that shape on camera enough times. Per Variety's coverage of the reality TV ecosystem, she's adjacent to that muscle memory alone would produce it. The receipt drops are edited before they land. Nobody had to write her a rundown. She already lived inside one. Sam being in the room matters too. Sam isn't just witness. Sam is the one who alerted her to some things that Sadie said. So, the sequence, if we trust the framing, is Krazian says the odor line on her own live, someone clips it, someone sends it to Sam, Sam brings it to Jaidyn's live, Jaidyn opens the folder. That's a 5-step chain that took, based on the way Jaidyn describes it, maybe a couple of hours. Modern rap beef runs on that timeline now. The distance between accusation and receipt dump is measured in the length of a stream break. And zoom in on that word, alerted. Not told. Not sent me. Alerted. That's the vocabulary of a coordinated network, not a group text. Jaidyn's word choice puts Sam in a role. The alert layer, the incoming intel filter, the person whose job in the friend group is to notice first and flag. Every crew of this size has a Sam. What the live confirms without either woman spelling it out is that this friend group has already been running the alert protocol for a while. This wasn't Sam's first alert. It was just Sam's first alert that made it onto camera. Now let's zoom in. One line. One word choice. Swamp. Jaidyn says it. One of her friends corrects to cemetery, then adds rotted. Decayed. Just rotting out the root. That whole sequence, swamp, cemetery, rotted, decayed, is doing something specific. It's building an escalation in metaphor. The friend isn't just co-signing. She's raising the bid. This is the way group chat cadence sounds when it makes it onto a live stream. Nobody's letting the joke sit, everybody's swinging harder than the last person. And that's why the clip travels. The audience doesn't just see one person swinging, they see a whole room swinging, and the room feels like it's on your side because you're watching it in first person. That's engagement mechanics, whether Jaidyn is thinking about them or not. The $900 county check line, that number is not random. In California, state-level general assistance and CallWorks benefit calculations put certain individual monthly figures in that neighborhood depending on household size, income, and county. I'm not saying that's what Krazian is or isn't collecting. I'm saying if you were going to pick a number that sounds plausible and hits hard, $900 lands in the exact range that would read as specific and cruel and possibly correct to anyone who's ever navigated the system. Whether the number is factual or just plausibly shaped is a different question. Tier 3 read. The number feels engineered. The repeat move. Watch Jaidyn on any of her last 4 lives archived to fan pages, and there's a tick she runs when a topic is one she's been briefed on versus one she's freestyling. Briefed topics get the head tilt and half smile before the delivery. Freestyle topics get the eye roll first. On the tampon story, head tilt half smile. On the county check figure, head tilt half smile. On the section 8 housing line about the mother, eye roll first, then delivery. That's a small tell. That's the tell of a woman who came in with 3 lines prepared and improvised the 4th. I zoomed in on that clip 3 times before I trusted what I was looking at. It's small. It's also consistent. Somebody in the comments spotted it before I did. Drop the timestamp if you caught it too. The label mechanics under the shots. Milf Music is Blueface imprint, and Jaidyn is the flagship artist. That's public. What's less public is the way flagship artist economics work when the imprint owner is also the co-parent of the flagship artist. Publishing splits on the Stewie era, per what's queryable on ASCAP's public repertory, list the writing credits in a specific configuration that keeps the ownership tight inside the family circle. That configuration is not unusual. Plenty of independent imprints run that way. But it is worth naming because it means every time Jaidyn goes public with the co-parent's other baby mother, the fight isn't just personal. It's a fight happening on top of a shared publishing statement. That's a magnifier the housing jab and the Bravo aside don't advertise, but the paper does. Digital magnifier the archived reaction economy. Within 30 minutes of the tampon quote going live, kick clip aggregators, TikTok stitch accounts, and repost blogs had the exact same 47-second segment up in 11 identifiable places per what's visible in the wayback captures of the first hour repost cycle. The identical trim points across those 11 mirrors, same in, same out, same caption structure, tell you the clip wasn't discovered 11 times. It was distributed once and mirrored 11 times. Who's running the distribution layer for a Jaidyn Alexis live is a question the timestamps ask on their own. I don't have the answer to it in this folder. I have the pattern. The pattern says, coordinated, and this one I had to run back twice. Somewhere in the last 20 minutes of the live, right when the karaoke thread opens, the room audio dips. Not the mic, the room. Whoever's operating the setup on Jaidyn's and pulls the ambient down for the karaoke tease specifically. That's a production choice, not a technical accident. The audio bed thins right when the volume of the accusation would otherwise be loudest. It's the same trick a talk radio engineer runs when the host is about to say something the producer wants clean on the pull quote. Somebody in that room knew which line was the pull. All right, now the framing war. Because the same clips are running through 3 different filters right now, depending on which corner of the internet you're standing in. The neighborhood talk and the reposting blog ecosystem. You know the pattern, leans into the messiest quotes, headlines it as Jaidyn Alexis drags Krazian rock, lets the comments do the rest. Their framing choice, this is a scoreboard, points to Jaidyn. Move on to the next post. No context about the months-long back and forth, no timeline reconstruction, no note that Krazian is pregnant. Just the dunk. The Stan Camp Twitter framing splits into 2. Jaidyn's camp is framing this as she finally said what needed to be said. Krazian's camp is framing it as this is a pregnant woman being publicly humiliated by her ex's other baby mother, and the room laughing along is the whole point. Both of those framings are internally consistent. Both of them are also selecting which quotes to amplify, the tampon quote versus the ain't you a month out quote, depending on which side you want to make look worse. And then there's the third framing, which is the one you'll see on comment sections under any repost. They're both grown women. Why are they fighting over Blueface? That framing wants to make it a wash. Both parties equally wrong. Move on. It's a comfortable frame because it doesn't require you to pick a side. It's also the frame that ignores the specific mechanics of what happened, which is that one party said something on her live, the other party heard about it and responded on her live, and the even both sides reading treats those as equivalent when they're actually sequential. Somebody swung first. The other one swung back louder. That's a fact of order, not a value judgment. Add a fourth filter to the wall, because it's already running the trade-adjacent framing. Complex's coverage of previous chapters in this ecosystem has, historically, taken the let the receipts sit and let the audience decide approach, a framing that reads as neutral but functionally amplifies whoever brought more paper to the fight. In this cycle, that's Jaidyn because she showed up with quotes and dollar figures and specific stories, and Krazian, as of this recording, has not responded yet. The trade-adjacent framing is going to look neutral. It is going to function as an amplifier. Those aren't the same thing. Notice which verbs the trade posts lean on when they cover this. Alleges versus claims versus says on stream. Each one carries a different pressure setting. Watch for alleges specifically. That's the verb that reads as legally cautious and audience favorable at the same time. Fifth filter. And this one's a real headline pattern rather than an imagined commenter. The pregnancy protection framing that's already showing up on the Madame Noir side of the coverage, where the framing is not who is right but who is punching down. That framing treats the pregnancy as a hard shield and assumes any shot at Krazian during it is disqualifying by category. It's a moral frame, not a factual one. Steelman it fully. The argument is that a pregnant public figure is in a specifically vulnerable window, and any accusation lobbed during it carries additional weight, because the target cannot respond with her full capacity. That's a real argument. It has moral force. It also has a hole in it, and the hole is not a requote, it's a callback to the sequencing we already established. The pregnancy did not disable the odor accusation on Krazian's live. If the pregnancy is a shield, it has to work in both directions, and by the framing camp's own logic, that means Krazian's on-live comments earlier in the week get the same categorical protection that they're now demanding for the response. You can't hold the shield up on one side and let it drop on the other. That's not a shield. That's a preference. Somebody's going to say the whole thing is beneath both of them and neither should be dignifying it with airtime. That's a real read. I respect it. Here's why I still lean toward covering it. This isn't private drama that leaked. This is two public figures using their own broadcast tools to litigate against each other in real time in front of tens of thousands of paying viewers. When the venue is public and the audience is monetized, it's no longer a private matter that got exposed. It's a business event, whether either party wants to call it that or not. So the coverage is fair game. Doesn't mean everything in the coverage has to be cruel, just means the event is on the record. Here's the take we're not supposed to say out loud. Jaidyn is winning this news cycle, but not for the reason her camp thinks she's winning it. The tampon story is the clip that's traveling. The county check line is the quote that's getting screenshotted. Those are the moments people are laughing at. But the moment that actually landed, the one that reframes the whole dynamic, is the aside where she says, essentially, tell them to stop calling me. Because that one line, dropped almost casually, tells you that the traffic between these two camps is not one-directional. It's not Krazian throwing shots from a distance and Jaidyn responding from a bunker. It's a two-way phone line that neither of them wants to admit exists. And whoever's picking up first, whoever's calling first, that's the story under the story. Because if the calls are still happening, and Jaidyn is the one telling the audience they are, then the beef is not a beef in the way the timeline is framing it. It's an entanglement. It's a set of relationships between multiple parties who share a child's father, share a whole ecosystem of friends and enemies, share a label orbit, share a city. The fight is the surface. The phone calls are the substance. And the reason Jaidyn is going scorched earth on live in front of 40,000 people isn't because Krazian called her stinky. It's because the phone call layer keeps happening and the public layer keeps happening, and Jaidyn is trying to force the two into alignment. She's basically saying, if you're going to call me privately, don't act like a stranger publicly. If you're going to act like a stranger publicly, don't call me privately. Pick one. That's the thesis. Under everything else, the tampons, the swamp, the $900, the karaoke, Jaidyn is trying to end a relationship that never actually got labeled as a relationship in the first place. Which is why the volume is what it is. You don't need this much volume to end a beef. You need this much volume to end an entanglement you can't legally file paperwork on. Defend it against the she's just being petty read with the receipts we've already put on the table. The tampon story is first person. The county check figure is specific. The Bravo aside is a swap accusation, not a random shot. The karaoke thread is a promise, not a bluff. The stop calling refrain is on record, twice cadenced. That's not the receipt profile of a petty vent. That's the receipt profile of somebody closing a file. Petty is what her camp will call it, because petty is a small word for a small fight, and if the fight is small, the reputational hit stays small. But the paper density here is the paper density of a woman with a folder, not a woman with a mood. Read the folder as a folder. The petty read collapses. And the mainstream frame, the both women are wrong wash, is not just insufficient, it's actively deployed. Madame Noir and a handful of adjacent outlets have already run some version of it, and the reason is not neutrality. The reason is that the wash frame is the safest frame for advertisers reading over the outlet's shoulder. The wash frame gets everybody home. It doesn't get the story right. And the moment you notice which outlets reach for the wash frame first, you notice something about the incentives. The outlets that need brand-safe copy in the next Q3 report reach for the wash frame the fastest. That's not conspiracy. That's ad-tier math. The math shapes the headline. Here come the jabs. I owe the crowd that's been holding the high road flag up. And there are jabs to be made against the she should have taken the high road crowd, so let me plan a few. High road assumes the low road wasn't already occupied. High road assumes a public figure has an obligation to absorb accusations about her body's odor on a live stream without responding. High road assumes the pregnant status of the other party is a shield that only works one way. High road assumes any of the people advising the high road would actually take the high road themselves under the same conditions. None of that survives contact with reality. The high road is a moral position people advise other people to take, because they're not the one being called stinky in front of 40,000 strangers. High road assumes a woman with a label depending on her name equity has the option of eating a public odor accusation without a business consequence. She doesn't. High road assumes there's a private mediation channel that would have resolved this before the cameras came on. There isn't. That channel is the phone line Jaidyn already said isn't working. High road assumes silence reads as strength. Silence reads as concession in this specific ecosystem, and everybody in this specific ecosystem knows that. High road assumes the audience punishes escalation. This audience rewards it. The metrics are the receipt on that one, and they're right there in the concurrent viewer count on the archived stream. And dryly, high road assumes there's a road. Sometimes it's just a driveway with a broken gate. That said, and this is the honest hedge, Jaidyn saying, your mom is sloppy and pinning section 8 status to a woman who isn't in the fight is where I lean back. Not because it isn't a shot people take. It's just the shot that lands hardest on someone who isn't holding a microphone. That's the beat of Alive where the auditor voice in me went quiet. You can go at Krazian all day. She's a public figure with a live stream of her own. Krazian's mom didn't sign up for that. That one in my read is the miss. All right, forward tense. By the time this weekend hits, expect Krazian to respond. Not maybe expect. She's not the type to let a stream sit. The response will land on her own live. It will hit the tampon story head-on because she can't leave it hanging, and it will pivot to a counter-inventory of Jaidyn's own paper trail, the Blueface material, the label mechanics, the mother of his kid dynamics. Watch what happens when that counterlive goes up. The same blogs that ran the Jaidyn Drags Krzyzyan headline will run the Krzyzyan Responds headline within the hour. The scoreboard resets. The cycle continues. Watch how the counterlive builds. The opening minutes are about to be devoted to the tampon story specifically, because that's the clip that traveled. Once that's addressed, denied, mocked, or reframed. The middle of the live is about to pivot to the phone call layer, because Krzyzyan cannot let the tell them to stop calling me line stand as the accepted version. By the last third, don't be shocked when a named third party gets introduced, a friend, a witness, a receipt-adjacent figure who can testify to the Jaidyn side of the phone log. That third party is going to become the story for the next 48 hours after the response airs. And the failure prediction Jaidyn's camp is going to want on record. They're going to bet Krzyzyan can't produce a specific counterfigure to the $900. If she can't, the county check line calcifies as accepted. If she can, the whole frame flips. Don't be surprised if the Bravo story time Jaidyn promised at 7K subs actually drops. She teased it. She got the subs. The chat's holding her to it. And once that story is on the record in her own voice, it becomes a receipt Krzyzyan has to address directly, either by confirming, denying, or ignoring, and each of those choices has a cost. If she confirms, it's a headline. If she denies, it's a he said, she said cycle for another week. If she ignores, the story calcifies as the accepted version because the accused didn't push back. Silence has weight here. Jaidyn knows it. That's why she teased the story time at a specific sub-number. She was building a public commitment device. Once the Bravo story time hits, watch how the ecosystem recalibrates. Reposting blogs will lead with the swap framing, because the swap framing is the cleanest clip caption. Fancam accounts on the Jaidyn side will run the story time as evidence of vindication. Fancam accounts on the Krzyzyan side will run it as evidence of jealousy. Same footage, opposite reading. And by the middle of the following week, expect at least one podcast, I'd bet on the Joe Budden ecosystem, or an adjacent panel show, per the Fader's coverage of who's been talking about this arc, to open the story time with an in-studio breakdown that lands harder than the original live, because it comes with editorial framing the live didn't have. The secondary failure prediction the Jaidyn camp should be worried about here. If the podcast panel treats the story time as thin, the audience will retrofit that read backwards onto the live. This one's going to divide the timeline. The wild card is Blueface, because in all of this, he's the connective tissue, and he's the one who has said the least on this specific 24-hour cycle. If he weighs in, it flips the whole story. If he weighs in on Krzyzyan's side, Jaidyn's Milf music positioning gets weird. She signed his label. If he weighs in on Jaidyn's side, Krzyzyan has a whole new front to fight on. If he stays silent, the silence itself becomes a data point that both camps read as favorable. But once he tweets, and his history shows, he does eventually tweet, the balance shifts. Watch that account. That's where the next real receipt drops. Once he does tweet, expect the tweet to come phrased as a joke. That's his register. That's how all hip-hop has archived his public response pattern for years. The joke will read as neutral to casual readers and as clear alignment to fans on both sides, Rorschach post engineered. The next 24 hours will decide which reading wins, and the tell will be which of the two camps quotes the tweet in a repost within the hour. The camp that quotes it fastest is the camp it was aimed at. By the time the following weekend hits, expect a subsequent Blueface post that's less coded and more directional, because his own release calendar has a Q3 window sitting in it, and silence past a certain point in a news cycle stops paying dividends for the party who has music to sell. The next window will teach both women what side of a ledger he's on. The failure prediction on this one, the he'll stay neutral read is about to break. The residue, the 5-year read on this, is that Jaidyn's public voice is sharpening. A year ago, she wasn't running lives like this. 2 years ago, she was a name attached to Blueface ecosystem, more than she was a name in her own right. Right now, in real time, she's building a broadcaster identity that is separate from her music, separate from her label, separate from her baby father. That's a career pivot happening in public, whether she's calling it that or not. Once the dust settles on this specific cycle with Krazian, the through line will be Jaidyn is now somebody who can command a room on her own, and the industry is going to price her differently for it. Podcasts will call. Reality opportunities will call. Brands that were hesitant will reconsider. This live isn't just a fight. It's a resume. By the end of 2026, expect the resume shift to show up in a concrete deal announcement. Hosting slot, a cosign on a network reality vehicle, or a distribution upgrade for Milf music that reads on paper as unrelated but tracks on the timeline back to this exact cycle. Once that deal hits, the industry repricing story I just called becomes retroactive, and the aftershock 5 years out is not about Jaidyn or Krazian at all. It's about the next artist in Blueface orbit who signs to Milf music with a full understanding that the broadcasting layer is part of the job. This live rewrote the imprint's job description without a memo. The next signee will inherit that description. I already know what the industry beat writers are about to type when that signee gets announced. And Krazian, in the same window, is at a fork. The pregnancy timeline puts her in a period where she'll be less able to do the every night live grind. That creates a vacuum. Vacuums get filled. Whoever is loudest in the next 30 days is going to shape the narrative for the rest of the year. If Krazian doesn't respond fast, Jaidyn's version becomes the version. If she responds and it doesn't land, Jaidyn's version still becomes the version. There's a specific asymmetry here that the timeline is imposing, and both parties know it. Trace that asymmetry out one more step. The post-birth window for Krazian is going to be, by every existing template in this ecosystem, a reintroduction cycle, new brand deals, new content pivots, new visual identity. The narrative that gets set in the next 30 days becomes the narrative the reintroduction cycle has to answer. If the accepted narrative is she was called out and didn't respond in time, the reintroduction reads as a comeback and the comeback needs a villain. If the accepted narrative is she was ambushed while pregnant and rose above it, the reintroduction reads as a return and the return needs a stage. 2 different templates, 2 different budgets, 2 different casting decisions for the supporting players. And by year-end 2026, expect the version that got locked in this specific week to be the one shaping her Q1 2027 rollout. The next window will make or break that. One more forward beat. Somebody in the industry, I'm going to say someone in Krazian's management or adjacent orbit, is going to make a public, let's move on statement within a week. That statement will be framed as focus on the baby or protect the peace. It will be strategically timed, and it will not work because both parties have too much audience financial incentive to let this die. The move on statement will itself become a data point. Watch for it. So, the loop. The one I planted at the top, the aside about who's still calling who. Rewind the live and count how many times Jaidyn says, tell them to stop calling me. It's not a one-off. It's a refrain. She keeps returning to it. And she never once names who them is. That's the seam. That's the part the tampon quote is covering for. The tampon story is the loud part. The stop calling line is the quiet part. And the quiet part is what actually tells you where the story is going next. Because if the phone is still active and Jaidyn is putting on the record on her own live in front of her own audience that it is, then this beef is going to keep looping. Not because either woman wants it to, because the phone won't hang up. And no amount of live streaming is going to fix a phone line that both parties keep answering. That's the read. That's where the receipts point. That's where we'll pick it up when the next round drops, and it's dropping this weekend, bank on it. If this breakdown hit, you know the drill, like sub bell. If you were on the party bus, in the karaoke bar, or in any of the group chats where this cycle has been building for months, the comments are open, drop what you know. Next case is already loading. Wrap and receipt out.